Have you ever done something good for your family and then regretted it? I'm not talking about the little things, but a real sacrifice. Some big thing that seemed to make you all appreciate more, but instead you just get a stick up your ass. I know how you feel. I've done it too. My name is Alex. The story I'm about to tell you changed my life. A few months ago, I decided to give my family a gift. My mom was not lucky in her life. She worked all her life and raised me alone until she met Bob, my stepfather. She believed that he loved her. I wasn't so sure, but I knew that my mom always dreamed of a vacation, and I wanted to make her happy. So I took my savings, found a luxury resort, and bought vouchers. A 5-star hotel, all-inclusive, white sand beaches, cocktails by the pool, a real dream. I paid for tickets, rooms, even excursions. It was worth it, right? But then I didn't know what I was getting into. It all started at the airport. We gathered at the airport, me, my mom, Bob, and his 2 children from his previous marriage. My mom was beaming with happiness. I was happy too. But Bob, if he was already acting as if he had organized everything. "We should sit together," he said when I got the tickets. "We are already together," I replied. "But you bought the tickets, didn't you? Why am I not at the window?" I didn't say anything. It was nothing, but I didn't like the fact that he didn't even say thank you. The flight was fine. But as soon as we stepped onto the resort grounds, Bob started acting even more impudent. When we approached the reception, the receptionist handed me the keys. "Did you book 3 rooms?" I nodded. "One for Mom and Bob, one for me, one for his kids. But here Bob is barging in. Actually, we want to change it." I was surprised. "You wanna change what?" "You don't mind living with the kids, do you? They love company." My eyes rounded. "What? Well, you don't mind, do you? They're kids, they'll have fun with you. And your mom and I will change our room to a suite. Are you serious?" Bob smiled as if it were not even a question. You bought the rooms so you can change them." I looked at my mom. She didn't want a conflict, so she didn't say anything. I looked at Bob's children. They were 12 and 14 years old. They were really excited about the idea. I looked at the hotel receptionist. She was waiting. I looked at Bob, and I realized that he had planned all this. But you know what? I hadn't realized how brazen he was. I agreed to go along with it. I didn't want to spoil my mom's vacation. But it was the biggest mistake of my life, because it was just the beginning. Have you ever felt like you were being used? Mona, not directly, not openly, but in a veiled way, as if by the way. When you don't seem to be obliged to agree, but if you refuse, you will look like a bad person. I didn't realize it at the time, but Bob was preparing the ground for something bigger. And the first alarm bell rang on the first night. I walked into the room where I was to stay with Bob's children and realized that it was going to be a disaster. First of all, it was a standard double room. 2 separate beds. I looked at the children questioningly. "Where am I supposed to sleep?" I asked. "You can take a chair." The younger man offered cheerfully. I inhaled and exhaled. It's okay. This can still be overcome. I went to my mom and Bob's house to talk to them. But as soon as I knocked on their door, Bob stuck his head out and grimaced. "What's wrong?" "There are only 2 beds in my room," I said. "Where am I supposed to sleep?" The Bob shrugged his shoulders. "It's a hotel. Ask for an extra bed." I gritted my teeth. "You're the one who changed rooms." Bob sighed theatrically. "Oh, young people, solve your own problems." He muttered and closed the door. I stood in the corridor, feeling like I had just been made a fool of. And that was just the beginning. The next morning we went to breakfast at the hotel restaurant. Everyone chose what they wanted. The atmosphere was light. Until the waiter brought the check. Bob pushed it toward me. "Well, you're paying, right?" I almost choked on my juice. "What? Well, you paid for the vouchers," he said. "So what's the difference if you pay for the breakfast too?" I looked at my mom, dumbfounded. "Mom." She smiled awkwardly. "Son, don't argue. This is our family vacation." Then I remained silent. Then I took out my card and paid. But I was already starting to boil inside. After breakfast, everyone decided to go to the beach. I wanted to walk a bit to get away. But when I got out in the lobby, I was stopped by the receptionist. "I'm Mr. Alex. Do you really want to change your room to a cheaper one?" I froze. What?" She opened the computer. "Our Bob Fisher said you'd agreed to the change." My breath caught in my throat. Bob had gone and changed my number without my knowledge. I turned around and ran to the beach. Bob was lying on a sun lounger, drinking a cocktail. I approached him, gritting my teeth. "Anuka Bob, what the hell did you do?" He looked up lazily. "What are you talking about? You changed my number." He shrugged his shoulders. "Yeah, well, you live with the kids anyway. I thought didn't need that comfortable room." I took a deep breath. You didn't even ask me," Bob smiled. You said you didn't mind living with the kids." I felt anger boiling up inside me. "That's not the same as giving up your own room." Bob waved me off. Don't make a big deal out of it." I looked at my mom, hoping she would say something, but she just shrugged her shoulders. And then I realized Bob was not just taking advantage of the situation. He's brazenly cheating on me. And this is not the end of it. There are moments when it seems that it can't get any worse, that this is the end of all the absurdity, and it's only going to get better. But no. Some people will always find a way to hurt even more. And Bob knew exactly how to do it. I woke up in my cramped room with the chaos of Bob's children's belongings falling on me. I got up, drank some coffee, looked at my phone, and almost smashed it against the wall. I had a minus on my account, a total one. I refreshed the page again. The same story. My bank account was almost completely empty. There was no money. I opened my statement and realized what happened. Bob. More precisely, his endless, small expenses over the past 2 days. Dozens of write-offs as restaurants, expensive alcohol, equipment rental, some incomprehensible bills for entertainment. And they all came from my card. I jumped up and ran to the restaurant where they were all having breakfast. Bob was sitting at the table, waving his arms and laughing out loud. I walked up and threw the phone in front of him in front of everyone. What? This. He looked at the screen and laughed. "Oh, you mean this? Well, you said yourself that you would cover the expenses." A wave of rage swept over me. "Eh?" "I did." He raised an eyebrow. "Well, you paid for the voucher. That automatically means you're sponsoring the family vacation." I nearly choked on my breath. Bob, are you kidding me? You're the one who booked everything without asking me." He leaned back, folding his arms across his chest. "Look, I don't want to argue. It's just money. Just money." I almost shouted. "I don't have any more," Bob sighed theatrically. "Well, then it's time to learn to save." I looked at my mom. She was silent. She was just silent. I took a slow breath. "Mom." She looked away. Well. This is a family vacation." I felt like I'd been run over by a truck. She knew it. She knew and didn't say anything. I stood up, grabbed my phone, and walked out. I stood on the ocean shore looking at the water. I paid for this trip, and I covered all the expenses, and I was left with an empty bill. What to do? I had a ticket back, but only in a week. I had 0 money. I could have gone to the bank, complained, blocked the card, but that wouldn't have solved the problem here and now. I could have demanded the money back from Bob, but he was openly mocking me. I could. And then an idea came to me. It seems it was time to make a move in response. And this time it was tough. There is a limit after which you can't take it anymore. When you realize that either you change the situation or the situation destroys you. And this moment has come. I returned to the hotel. I went into my room, which had long since turned into a children's camp. Things were scattered everywhere. Juice was spilled. Toys, even someone's socks were on my bed. The kids were screaming. Bob had disappeared somewhere, and my mom was sitting in the corner flipping through a magazine as if nothing had happened. I went over to her. "We need to talk." She raised her head. "What about?" And I clenched my teeth. About all of it. About the money. What was happening? She sighed and put the magazine down. Son, I understand that you're angry, but it's just money. I felt something click inside me. Just money. AL, Mom, it was AL my money. She shrugged. Our Bob didn't mean to hurt you. Hurt me. He was just using me. And you stood there and didn't say anything. She pursed her lips. You're overreacting. I took a step back. I realized there was no point in talking any further. Even if she justified Bob, even after that, it was over. I wasn't going to take it anymore. I locked myself in the bathroom, first thing, checked my credit card balance. There was still some money left. Second, tickets. I opened the airline's website. There was an option to fly home tomorrow morning. The ticket cost almost all my remaining money. But it was the only way out. I went back to my room, packed my things, threw my backpack on my shoulders and left. My mom noticed. Where are you going? I didn't even stop. I'm going home. She jumped up. Are you kidding? I looked at her. I'm not kidding. But we're on vacation. I laughed. This is not a vacation. This is a disaster. You can't just leave. I looked her straight in the eye. I look at me as best I can. And then I walked out, closing the door. I stood in the airport waiting room. The plane was supposed to leave in an hour. My phone was bursting with messages. My mom, please come back. Bob, you're acting like a child. Even the children were sending something, obviously from their mother's phone. I closed my eyes. No, that's it. Now I am my own boss. And you know what? It was the best decision of my life. Everything in life works like dominoes. On a one move and the whole structure starts to fall apart. I got on the plane, fastened my seatbelt and closed my eyes. There was only one thought in my head. I really did it. I just got up and left. I left them there. But was that really the end of the story? No, it was just the beginning. As soon as I landed, my phone vibrated again. 5 missed calls from my mom, 13 messages from Bob, and a bunch more from his kids. I was in no hurry to answer, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened the message from my mom. How could you? We are left here without money. You realize that this is irresponsible, right? Then Bob, you've ruined our vacation. You're being selfish. We had to change hotels because of you. I hummed, wow, what a bunch of poor bastards. But the funniest were the voice messages. Firsting my mom complaining with a broken voice that I left her in the lurch. Second, Bob yells that I'm ungrateful. The third one of the kids is crying that there is no pool now. I read it all over again and deleted the chat but it was just the tip of the iceberg. Because the very next morning I received an email from the bank. I opened the email and felt a chill run down my spine. Dear customer, we would like to inform you that your credit card has been detected as having attempted to exceed the limit. What? I quickly went to the mobile app, and I realized. Bob was trying to pay for the hotel with my card. I froze. How? Did he remember my data? Or did Mom give them to him? I immediately called the bank and blocked the card. I sat in my apartment and tried to calm down. Bob wasn't just using me. He was trying to finish me off. Did he think I would just swallow it? No. I found my mom's phone and wrote a short message. Tell your husband that I blocked the card, and that if he tries something like this again, I will file a police report. The response came quickly. How could you think that about Bob? He just wanted to pay for the hotel. No calls, no messages. My mom didn't write. Bob disappeared. Even my kids didn't send their tearful emoticons. I let out a sigh. And then, the doorbell rang. I went over, looked through the peephole and froze. My mom was standing on the doorstep, all alone, without Bob, and with a suitcase. I wonder what she would say now. Sometimes you don't have to take revenge. You just have to sit down and watch everything fall into place. I stood in the doorway and looked at my mom, alone, with a suitcase, with a tired face. I didn't call her, but she was here. Hi, she said quietly, as if she was afraid I would slam the door in her face. I remained silent. Can I come in? I waited a little longer and then stepped aside. She put her suitcase in the corner and sat down heavily on the couch. I crossed my arms over my chest. Did something happen? Mom sighed. We came home. And everything went wrong. I didn't say anything, so she continued. After you left us, we had to change hotels. Bob was screaming that it was your fault. His kids were crying that their vacation was ruined. I raised a skeptical eyebrow. My mom looked down. He started drinking. Right after he got back, I rolled my eyes. Oh, another great story about how my mother is a victim and her husband just snapped. But this is not the first time, I said coldly. My mom flinched. No, but this time. He lost his job. I was surprised. He said he would never be fired. He thought so, she said dryly. But after he got drunk at a corporate party and tried to fight with the manager, he was sent out without a word. I couldn't hide my smile. Karma. But my mom didn't notice. I tried to get money out of me. She looked at me, saying that I owed him, that you were a selfish person who set us up. And what did you do? She pressed her lips together. At first I gave him what was left over from my vacation, but then I found out he spent it all at the casino. I whistled. Oh well, did you know who you were marrying? Mom bit her lip. I could tell she was ashamed. And maybe for the first time in a long time it wasn't just acting. Where is he now? I asked. Mom shook her head. I don't know. I left him. I didn't expect that. What? I couldn't take it anymore. He came home drunk, yelling. He broke the furniture. The kids hate him and I couldn't take it anymore. I looked at her suitcase. What do you want from me? She bowed her head. I don't know. Maybe just stay here for a while. I thought about it. I could push her out the door. I could say that I was only responsible for myself, but looking at my mom, who finally opened her eyes, I just sighed. All right, then. But there are conditions. She looked up. What were they? No talking about Bob, no attempts to get back together with him, and no spending money on anyone but yourself. Mom thought about it and then nodded. Okay. I looked at her suitcase and hummed. So, did karma get you too, Mom? She didn't say anything, because she knew it was true. Sometimes you think you've already won, but that's when the rules. We need to change something, I said. Mom looked up at me. What exactly? I sat down across from her. We can't live in perpetual expectation that he will show up. I know that. Then we need to take control. As she carefully put the spoon on the plate. And what do you suggest? I stared at her tired face. You don't want to stay in this city, do you? She sighed. Bob is everywhere. I nodded. Then maybe it's time to move on. She paused for a moment, and I realized that this was the first time the thought had ever crossed her mind. Move, she whispered. I nodded. Or if we started from scratch, he would have no power over us. She paused. It can't be done that easily. Why not? She smiled bitterly. I was used to this place. I understood her. I got used to it because I didn't know there was another life. She ran her fingers over the cup, and I saw two thoughts struggling in her head. The fear of staying and the fear of leaving. But the fear of leaving was not so strong. I'll think about it, she whispered. And I knew that this was a huge step forward, and that I went out on the balcony and looked at the evening city. The light of the headlights, the noise of people. I had spent my whole life here. But maybe that didn't mean I had to spend the rest of it here. What would happen next? And something would definitely change. And I was ready for it. There are moments in life when it seems like you're standing on the edge of a cliff. But what if this is not the end, but a chance to start over? The apartment was almost empty. Boxes were stacked by the door, old things were given away or thrown away, and I stood in the middle of the room trying to realize that it was all real. Mom was finishing packing the kitchen. Is it done? I asked. Ayashi nodded, but there was sadness in her eyes. It was the last morning in this house. I did not try to reassure her. It's really hard. When you live somewhere for decades, it seems that your roots have grown to this place. But sometimes the only thing you can do is to pull out those roots and transplant them into new soil. We're not running away, Mom, I said quietly. She looked at me. Sometimes it seems like there's not much difference between the two. We went downstairs where a van was waiting for us. The driver helped me load my things, and I looked around again. This entrance. This yard. I used to think I would stay here forever. And now everything is different. I'm not the same guy who was patient and silent anymore. And my mom is no longer the woman who was afraid to take a step into the unknown. I saw her looking at the house, too. Will you miss me? I asked. She thought about it. Will you miss this place? No. I raised my eyebrows. But you grew up here. She smiled. A place is just a place. I'll miss the people. But not the things that made me live in fear. I nodded. She was right. We got into the car. The van moved first. We followed. The city was left behind. I felt my mom squeezing my hand. She was silent, but I understood everything without words. We were starting a new life. Perhaps it will be difficult. But now we have the most important thing. She found a job. She stopped making excuses for Bob. She even started laughing again. It seemed to me that everything was getting better. But as it turned out, I relaxed too soon. One evening I was coming home from work. As soon as I got the keys, I felt that something was wrong. And when I opened the door, I realized what it was. Bob was sitting on my couch. I jumped up and down. "Hair you lost." My mom was standing in the kitchen, pale as chalk. He didn't leave. He came back. "Oh, you owe me?" he said. I laughed. Why would he do that? Bob gritted his teeth. "You got me fired." I pulled out my phone. "Or you got drunk and tried to fight your boss." Was that my fault? His hand clenched into a fist. "Oh, you're going to pay?" I raised my eyebrows. "Or else what?" Bob relaxed his fist. He smiled. And that's where I didn't like it. If you don't help me, your mom will pay." He turned to her. "Right, darling." Mom looked away. "He owes you, doesn't he?" I stared at her. She was silent. And then I realized. And tell me it's not true, my heart was pounding. My mom pressed her lips together. "Hey," Bob laughed. She gave me the money. I ran my hand over my face. "Of course she did." I took a deep breath. "So what now?" Bob tilted his head to the side. "Now you're going to give me even more." No, I calmly crossed my arms over my chest. "No." Bob raised his eyebrows. "What?" I said. "No." I took a step toward him. "And now you're out of my house," he huffed. "What if I don't?" I turned on my phone. "Then I'll call the police." Bob grimaced. "You won't do that." I pressed the call button. He jumped up. "Hey!" Mom exhaled sharply. "Bob, go." He hesitated for a moment. But then he looked at me and my determination. And left. When the door closed behind him, I turned to my mom. "How much did you give him?" She lowered her head guiltily. I sighed. "It's good that he left." Mom sat down. "He'll come back." I shrugged my shoulders. I was ready now. The game had changed. And this time I was the one who dictated the rules. It seemed like the worst was over. But what if this was just the calm before the storm? Bob left. I kicked him out the door and he didn't come back for days. Mom was quiet. She hadn't gotten used to the fact that someone had put her husband in his place. And me? I could finally exhale. But there was one but. You think that when problems disappear, it becomes easier immediately. But the truth is that after a big storm there is always silence. And in this silence, thoughts begin to come up. My mom was sitting in the kitchen, stirring coffee and looking out the window. I couldn't stand it. What are you thinking about?" She shuddered. "Just what now?" I didn't know what to say. Bob was gone. But he came back once already. Who's to say he won't come back again? My mother also realized this. "Hey, I can't be afraid all my life," she said quietly. I nodded. "You won't." "Are you sure?" I thought about it. Bob was gone, but his shadow remained. Even if we didn't see him again, his influence was still there. Mom was exhausted, and so was I. I thought about what could happen next, and that was the most interesting thing. What if this is just the beginning?